Hi, so today I'm going to be talking about this Dan Savage video that I saw. It discusses relationships and monogamy. The monogamy part is the area where I intensely disagree with what he said, and I'm going to present my counter-arguments and you tell me what you think. Now, before I get into the monogamy part, there's actually a lot of good information in this video. He talks about how you negotiate certain things in relationships. He talks about how it's silly to dump someone entirely because there's one small thing that they like that you just can't wrap your head around, so you just X the entire package. There's a lot in negotiating that he talks about that makes a lot of solid sense, and I really understand why he is successful as someone who gives advice on relationships and dating and whatnot. Now, the area where I agree is, again, the monogamy area. So I'm going to play what he had to say, and then I'm going to tell you what I think.
Monogamy. It's a nice idea. But it is literally the only thing humans do where 100% perfection, perfect execution, is the only standard of success. If you are the world's greatest snowboarder and you are covered in gold medals, you can get on a mountain and snowboard down it and fall on your ass and get up and still be the world's greatest snowboarder. If you are the world's greatest chef, you can burn a fucking omelet one day and still be the world's greatest chef. If you are with someone for 50 or 60 years and you cheated on them one time, you are terrible at monogamy. It's an impossible standard of perfection, and it's why we all fail at it. Those who attempt it almost all fail at it.
All right, so he's essentially saying that in every other area of human behavior, we would not expect perfection. If you fail one time, we would not consider, we wouldn't take away the gold medals from the snowboarder, or we wouldn't say that that person's not a 5-star chef because they burned one omelet. And he's making this all-or-nothing fallacy, which is that you are either 100% successful or 0%, that there's no in-between. And he's also using an analogy that, in my opinion, is unfair. We first have to examine the definition of failure in each of these scenarios. So when we talk about the scenario of the snowboarder, he fails by means of carelessness. So I'm snowboarding and, oh, I thought that was a snowball, that was a piece of ice. Whoops, I slipped. The snowboarder, in Dan's analogy, failed by means of carelessness. Now, if we look over to the chef analogy, the chef was making an omelet and he burned it. So maybe he was forgetful. He left it on there too long. He was twiddling with his cell phone or something, or he was having a conversation with someone, whatever, daydreaming, whatever it is. He forgot that the omelet was still cooking, and he failed by virtue of forgetting. So the first person failed by carelessness, the second person failed by forgetting. And then the person that was in the monogamous relationship for 20 years that cheated, did they fail by carelessness? No. Did they fail by forgetting? No. They failed by intentionally making a decision that they knew would hurt somebody on a very, very deep level. So let's examine the two ways that that's different. The first is intent. So carelessness is not intentional. Forgetfulness is very rarely intentional, whereas the cheating is. So, I don't usually, like when it comes to carelessness, I don't very often say, go like, oh, whoops, I'm dating somebody, but I accidentally fell into his vagina. That's carelessness, and that very rarely happens in relationships, which is why I don't think that's a great analogy. And it's also very rare that I go, oh, I thought I was having sex with my girlfriend, but apparently I was having sex with I must have forgot what you look like. The carelessness and forgetfulness very rarely, if ever, happen in relationships. It's not the way people cheat. People cheat by making intentional, willful decisions that lead to it. It's not a mistake. First you have to make the decision that you are going to smile at someone at the supermarket when you're pissed off after a fight with your girlfriend. Then you have to make the decision that I'm then going to start a conversation with that person after they smile back at me. Then you have to make the decision to set up a time to meet. Then you have to make a decision to invite them back to your place. Then you have to make the decision to take your clothes off. Then you have to make the decision to, as you're taking your clothes off, not say that you admit to yourself, oh God, I'm doing something terribly wrong, let me stop this. Then you have to make the decision to put your dick inside of them, and that is not carelessness, that is not forgetfulness, that is intentional. The second is the degree to which you have hurt them. So the snowboarder essentially has not even hurt anybody else. He's hurt himself. He slipped. Ow. I hurt my knee. I hurt my shoulder. I threw out my back. In the case of the chef, they burned the omelet. That means one of two things. Either A, That chef is going to give a meal to somebody that is subpar, so they were expecting to get, you know, their $20 lunch and it was going to taste good and it tastes bad, and they leave a 4-star, 2-star Yelp review, whatever. You know, small potatoes. Or their meal is going to be delayed. So that person was expecting their meal to come out in 10 minutes. He burned the omelet. He's got to make the omelet again. Maybe it takes a half hour instead of 10 minutes. That's a very small slight, really small slight. But it is not a slight on the scale of cheating on someone. When you cheat on someone, you're essentially saying, I spent 20 years building trust in you, and that was, and you've destroyed that. You've destroyed that trust, which is incredibly emotionally painful. You have chosen to throw away what you had with someone for 20 years just, you know, because you were horny or because you were pissed or there was a fight or whatever. It's a very, very hurtful thing to do, and it hurts on a much larger scale. So if we were to compare the analogy, if we were to make this a proper analogy, I would not say that you fail as a snowboarder, that we should take away your gold medals because you trip and fail, because that's carelessness. I would say take away your gold medals if you're willingly going down a mountain, somehow figure out how to put a motor on your snowboard, and then run that snowboard into an 8-year-old child deliberately, and then you break their spine. Then we take away your gold medals. Or if you're cooking, it's not when you burn the omelet that we take away your 5-star restaurant rating and your status as a chef. When you start putting cyanide in your omelets and then making people severely sick or killing them, then we take away your status as a 5-star chef. We don't take away your status as a 5-star chef just because you happen to burn an omelet. We take it away when you kill people or when you do something very, very fucked up and wrong. And the problem with the Dan Savage analogy is that it essentially, it's all or nothing. So he will say, again, there's no difference made between cheating or whoops, I fell. And I would, again, say that nobody on God's green earth is going to say, whoops, my bad, honey, I slipped and I tripped and I fell in the vagina. That doesn't happen. Well, we wouldn't say that a chef that left an omelet on the stove too long was no longer a 5-star chef. All right, so let's take that and make it the same level in a relationship. So that level of forgetfulness in a relationship may be if you forget the 3-month anniversary mark. It's offensive. It's a failure, but it's not a failure on the same level as cheating. Let's take the snowboarder. The snowboarder made a mistake of carelessness, and we've already established the type of mistake it is, but let's establish the level that it's on. It's carelessness like, whoops, I tripped. I would say that a snowboarder that tripped, that would be probably on the same level as, let's say, you know, your girlfriend asks, how do I look in this dress? And you carelessly use the wrong choice of words. You may be in a little bit of trouble. It may not be the ideal thing to say, but that definitely is not on the same level as cheating.
People believe that if someone touches someone else, someone who's committed to you, made a monogamous commitment to you, touches someone else with their genitals, even once, they didn't love you. They never loved you. That your entire relationship was a lie, and the only corrective is divorce. You must leave that person. We define it as an unforgivable betrayal, and then we experience it as an unforgivable betrayal. And we sit around with our thumbs in our asses wondering why the divorce rate is as high as it is. When what we should be telling people is that you will grow up, you will fall in love, perhaps if monogamy is right for you or what you think you want, and a lot of people think they want it and actually don't, you will make a monogamous commitment, and asterisk, that doesn't mean because you're in love, you're not going to want to fuck other people. You're still going to want to fuck other people, so is your spouse. What monogamy means is you will refrain from fucking other people. Hopefully. And if you make it through 50 years and they cheated once or twice and you cheated once or twice, you were good at monogamy. You get a monogamy gold medal like the snowboarder who fell down that day. You should have a monogamy gold medal around your neck, not a noose around your neck.
There are areas where perfection is expected. I don't expect that my Uber will always be perfectly on time, but I do expect that my Uber driver will perfectly, 100% of the time, not stab me to death. I don't expect that a driver in their lifetime will have a perfect record and never have to stop short, but I do expect that that driver will never, over the course of their lifetime, go 80 miles an hour through a school zone and pave through a bunch of kids. There are times, there are areas where perfection is simply expected, at the highest hierarchy of where your actions will be incredibly hurtful to people if you do something that is imperfect, and I don't think that that's something that is particularly unreasonable. He also brings up the analogy of, let's say, you're an alcoholic, and he says, well, we wouldn't say that, what do we say when somebody tries to quit drinking and then starts drinking again? They fell off the wagon. We don't not let them back on the wagon, right?
If we regarded monogamy the way we regarded sobriety, we talk about monogamy as if it were some other kind of virginity. You're a virgin until you fuck someone or get fucked by someone, and you've lost your hymen, whether it's literal or spiritual, popped, gone, you're no longer a virgin. We should talk about it the way we talk about sobriety. You're sober, but you can fall off the wagon, and you can get back the fuck on the wagon. You can sober the fuck back up. And if we talked about it that way, we would be saying to people, value the relationship more than the perfect execution of the ideal.
But again, the issue here is the relationship involved. Monogamy is a relationship between two people. There's trust involved. If I drink, and then I quit drinking, and then I start drinking again, I haven't really broken anybody's trust except for my own. I haven't hurt anybody but myself. Now, let's say that I did break somebody's trust. Let's say that I'm an alcoholic, and I quit drinking because at work I was screaming at people and making big mistakes and losing customers and clients over my ridiculous outbursts as a result of being wasted all the time. Then I would have broken my employer's trust. And what do you think happens if you go to work enough times and get wasted and curse out your boss and curse out the clients and come to the office, reeking of absolute? You get fired. The same way in marriage, it will end in divorce.
I've been with my husband for 23-ish, 4-ish years, I can't remember. It's been a long time. And for 18 of the last years, we have been non-monogamous. I have had conversations with people in monogamous who are appalled by the fact that we're public about it, that I've talked about it, the fact that we're parents and we've talked about it publicly. And this is how these conversations have gone. I've had people look at me and say to me, I could never do what you and Terry have done because I value commitment and loyalty too highly. And I look at them like, I don't say anything, but I'm thinking, you don't think I want what? And the next thing out of the motherfucker's mouth is, all 3 of my marriages have been monogamous. And I'm like, oh, what you're committed to and loyal to is monogamy. Not these assholes you keep marrying and divorcing, but monogamy. We are committed and loyal to monogamy to such an extent that we are not committed and disloyal to the people we've married. And that is crazy. That is cart before the horse shit. And we need to correct that. That doesn't mean everyone should be in an open relationship like we are. That doesn't mean everyone has to be polyamorous or non-monogamous or monogamish. That means everyone needs to have realistic expectations, and that monogamous relationships are likelier to survive the long haul, including the near inevitable infidelity, if we talk about it this way instead. I am not talking about it this way to talk anybody out of making or staying in the making a monogamous commitment or staying in the monogamous relationship that you are in now, if that is what you want. I am trying, when I talk to monogamous people, to troubleshoot the likely coming catastrophe. There's a British writer whose name escapes me because pot, who said that every monogamous relationship is a disaster waiting to happen. But it's only a disaster waiting to happen, I would point out, if we continue to talk about monogamy and continue to talk about infidelity as always and everywhere a relationship extinction level event, because then we will perform that when it comes. Now, there are degrees, and we have to judge, I think, infidelities not by, it's an infidelity, to the electric chair. We have to judge an infidelity on its own demerits. Fucked your sister on your wedding night? Probably can't get past that. Nor do I blame you. Probably divorce. I might advise that. I've advised people who've been cheated on in certain circumstances to pull the plug or slit the throat, depending. But together 20 years, 25 years, children, family, property, 2 extended families knit together, a history together, a home that you've both inhabited and you've both built out where you feel comfortable and relaxed and safe. Let's put all that on the scale on this side, right? All of that. Children, family, property, history, extended families, social status, position in the community, all on one side of the scale. Hand job from a masseuse on a business trip. Or your wife hired a personal trainer that she was really attracted to. Of course she did. No one's ever hired a personal trainer they did not want to fuck. And they messed around. They hooked up. So what the people who say that I place too much emphasis and importance on sex, what those people tell me is this hand job or this hookup with the personal trainer is weightier than all of this. That all of this has to be discarded. That this is so colossally heavy that when you toss it on the scales, this might as well be a feather, and this has to be blown away and thrown away. And I am the non-monogamous person saying to that monogamous couple, don't believe the hype. That you can look at those scales and you can say all of this weighs more. All these years together, children, family, status, position, extended families. That you can add more weight to that. You can allow that to have the weight that it ought to have and say, this we can forgive and get past. This isn't, fucked my sister on my wedding night, and I found out 3 weeks later, or fucked one of the groomsmen on the wedding night because you were the passed out groom. So all I'm advocating for is not openness, not non-monogamy. It's not right for everybody. Non-monogamous people don't go to monogamous people and say, you're doing it wrong. That's a one-way critique. I have monogamous people coming to me all the time saying, you're doing it wrong. I don't say that to monogamous people. I'm telling this to monogamous people because I want their monogamous relationships to survive. I want them to be able to recommit to monogamy if there's an infidelity and an adultery. Because on some basic fundamental level, I'm kind of conservative. I want to protect and conserve marriages and commitments from these storms that are coming into them. I want people to be able to batten down the emotional hatches so that when this happens, and it is likely to, and that is the way you should talk about it before you get married. Not, this can never happen, I would kill you. But when this happens, how will we respond? When this happens, we will remember everything else on this one side of the scales and allow it to have the weight that it should have, and we will work through this, we will forgive if we can. If it is forgivable, if it isn't my sister on my wedding night.
You probably feel really petty right now. You feel really stupid. You were going to give up a relationship that you've had for 10 to 20 years with someone that you have shared history, shared property, shared children, shared social standing, shared memories, all because of something as inconsequential and meaningless as handjob from a masseuse or blowjob from the personal trainer. And I love the way Dan says things like handjob from the masseuse with that kind of wise twang to it that implies that that is meaningless, that is petty, that you should not weigh that meaningless and petty thing on the same level as a 20-year relationship, because the 20-year relationship is up here, whereas the meaningless, petty gym blowjob from the hot personal trainer is down there. And this is, in my opinion, very manipulative, and it's something that people did to me up until my mid-20s, not particularly with cheating in relationships, but just in all aspects of life, which is where people would have problems that resulted from them making really poor, bad, short-sighted, illogical, selfish, self-centered decisions. And those decisions would cause a grenade to fall in their lap, and for the pin to be drawn from that grenade. And then, rather than them trying to take that pin and put it back into the grenade that they pulled the pin on in the first place, what they would do is they would take that grenade with the pin pulled and throw it at me. And what many people do at this point is they will try frantically to put the pin back in the grenade rather than simply throw the grenade back at the person that threw it at them. You see, because if somebody puts a problem at my doorstep, it's like, oh my God, oh, I have to solve the problem. Oh, I hope I solve the problem so nobody's mad at me. I don't want people to be mad at me. I don't want them to not like me. What you should be doing is saying, well, this is actually your problem. No, I'm not solving your problem. Fuck you. You caused this problem. You put it into motion. It's on you now. But the thing is, that causes conflict. That causes confrontation. And people don't like causing confrontation. They don't like causing conflict. They don't like the anxiety and the uncertainty that arises from conflict and confrontation. So many people would rather have a grenade blow up in their face than simply hand the problem back to the person who had the audacity and the balls to place it in their lap to begin with. So the first thing that I would state here is that if an individual winds up cheating and then comes to the individual that did not cheat and says, are you really going to blow up a 20-year relationship over this? I would point out that this is not even a question for me. I'm not going to dignify that question with a response. You're the one that made the decision. You're the one that set the events in motion. We in society typically hold responsible the individual that set the events in motion, not the person that made the final decision. If my employee shows up to work high on heroin and I fire him, I am not the one responsible for firing that employee. That employee fired themselves when they made the choice to show up to work and deal with customers on heroin. If someone shoots up a school and then they are arrested by police, it is not the police that deterministically arrested that person. That individual got themselves arrested when they decided to shoot up a school. When a police officer arrests someone that's driving drunk, it is not the fault or the decision of the police officer. It is the decision of the individual that drove at 70 miles an hour through Manhattan after they got drunk. You understand what I'm talking about here. Now, it's really important that Dan mentions how petty that is. It's important that he mentions that should not be weighed as high on the scale. And I think it's important to note that that the hand job from the masseuse, the blow job from the personal trainer, that didn't really mean much, that actually makes it worse. That makes it a lot worse than it would have been if it was something that was meaningful. If you're cheating on me, you're essentially hurting me. So what I would wonder is, what is this person's threshold for hurting me? Are they only going to hurt me when it's something really, really important, or are they willing to hurt me over something that doesn't really matter? If my wife, prior to meeting me, was dating the love of her life for 3 years, and then that guy went into a coma for 10 years, and then that guy woke up from the coma, and my wife started seeing him again, I'm not saying that I would be happy with this, but I would understand where she was coming from. I would understand that even though she was hurting me because she wanted to see someone that loved her, that cared about her, that never had a say in whether or not he was going to be leaving the relationship. I could understand that. That matters. That's not petty. That is, but you compare this to something like, oh, I just wanted to fuck the personal trainer today? Like, really? 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 I'm supposed to forgive you because you did something that was petty, because you chose to hurt me over someone or something that didn't matter. Oh, great. I feel so much better now. Just for an analogy, if I'm broke and I go to Whole Foods and I steal a loaf of bread and beat the cashier over the head before I leave so that I could feed my starving daughter who's sick, I did something wrong, but you kind of understand why I did it. There was some high stakes. But if I'm just some millionaire rich kid that just wants to do something silly to feel adventurous, and I have a chef that makes me first-class meals every day, and I walk into Whole Foods and I beat the cashier over the head and steal a loaf of bread, I deserve to be tossed straight in jail. Nobody's going to have any sympathy for me, nor should anybody have any sympathy over me, because I caused someone extreme harm. Not because there were high stakes. I caused someone extreme harm because, fucking felt like it. We do not, as a society, value individuals that make extremely selfish decisions that harm others greatly for nothing. We do have a tendency to be sympathetic towards those who harmed others for a legitimate reason. If there was serious moral, ethical implications, if there's a life at stake, if there's some serious issue, but the fact that you were willing to fuck the personal trainer when you knew that would hurt me, when you knew that would be like a dagger through my heart, when you knew that would make me feel humiliated, when you knew that would cause me to feel less likely to trust someone ever again, when you knew that was going to make my life hell and make me feel terrible, and you're telling me that you did that for a petty reason, for something that didn't even matter to you? You didn't do it because your love of your life came back from the dead. You didn't do it because you thought that it was going to save someone's life. You did it just because you wanted to ejaculate to the personal trainer. Something that you could have done in the gym locker room, in the showers, with nobody looking, with the fucking towel in your hand. That makes it worse. Because what you're telling me is, hey, not only am I willing to hurt you for things that are serious to me, I'm willing to hurt you over anything. I don't particularly care if something is very valuable to me in the moment. If I have even the slightest idea that I could get the tiniest bit of pleasure right now, even at the expense of your happiness, trust, and well-being, I'll do it. You see, it's not just the action or the pettiness of the action. It's the philosophy that causes someone to say, that petty, tiny, small thing is worth hurting you for. That, just being able to feel good and being able to brag to my friends about what I did is worth stealing from Whole Foods and worth knocking someone on the back of the head for. And that's not something that we should be championing. That's not the type of value system that we should be looking up to as virtuous in society, nor are those the individuals, in my opinion, that we should be saving our sympathy for. Save the sympathy for the person that remarried after their first spouse was found terminally ill and thought they were going to die, who then realized their spouse was not going to die because they got their lung transplant last minute. Save your sympathy for when that happens. Do not feel sympathetic for when your spouse of 20 years decides, you know what, I'm horny right now, and I don't want to wait till 8 o'clock when my husband or my wife gets home. Let's fuck the personal trainer. Okay, so the fact that it's petty makes it worse, not better. Now let's move on to the second possibility. The second possibility is that that individual who cheated thought that they would never have to face the music. They thought that the truth was never going to come out. They were never going to be caught. This, again, is even worse. And here's the thing about this. With the first situation, how petty it was doesn't make it better. It made it worse. And here, if you plan to not tell your spouse that you cheated on them, if you plan to lie, how long you've been with them makes it worse, not better when you put it on the scale. You see, if I've known you for 2 weeks, I have 2 weeks worth of trust in you. I feel that I have 2 weeks worth of trust with you. So if you break that trust, it doesn't really hurt me much because you only had 2 weeks of trust. If you had a year's worth of trust and you break that trust, that's pretty painful because, trust is supposed to grow over time. So when trust is broken, it's really difficult to rebuild. And it's really difficult to trust again once someone has broken that. But if it's a week's worth, okay. Or even a year's worth, that's really painful but understandable. But if you had 10 or 20 years worth of trust with someone and you break that trust, what you're saying is that person has no sense of who they should or should not trust. You are ruining that individual's ability to trust. And love requires trust. You cannot have love without being able to know that what someone is telling you is true. So if someone can fool you for 2 weeks, okay, but we weren't really that serious, I understand. If somebody could fool you for a year, wow, that's pretty bad. But if somebody can fool you for 20 years and let you believe that they were trustworthy for 20 years and then not be, how do you fix that? The longer you've been with someone, the longer it takes for you to get over them. So if you've been with someone for 2 weeks, it may take a week to a month to get over. If you've been with them for a year, it may take 3 months to 2 years to get over. If you've been with someone for 20 years, man, that's going to be a few years to a lifetime to get over. And if somebody breaks trust 20 years in, what they're doing is they're saying that I don't care how I'm ruining your ability to pair bond, how I'm ruining your ability to have relationships in the future. Ruining your ability to socialize, have trusting and healthy relationships is nothing to me compared to 30 seconds of bliss inside the mouth of my personal trainer. And you have to be, in some way, shape, or form, fairly horrid to do that. And I don't think that you're wrong in any way for looking at that individual and saying, you made the decision to end this relationship when you decided that and hurting me was more important than an honest conversation or trying to work something out. You decided that hurting me in this terrible, like knife to the heart way was totally worth it for something as, in your words, as petty and low on the scale as handjob from the masseuse. Your decision, not mine. And something that should be thought about when people are taking grenades, lobbing them in your lap, and claiming that they're your problem, that they're your responsibility. Furthermore, and what scares me most about these things is that I think that we used to do things that were wrong, but we knew they were wrong. We were doing them anyway. We were making the excuses for ourselves at the time, but we were making excuses for why we were doing something that we knew was wrong. But lately, there seems to be this trend where rather than admit that what we've done is wrong, we try to take the wrong and turn it into a right. And this is very, very dangerous for a number of reasons. So let's say I'm doing something that's wrong, and I'm doing something that's wrong because of a terrible situation. It doesn't make it right, but I make an excuse for myself because what I'm doing is wrong. That is something that limits the amount of times I'm going to do it. It also limits the likelihood that I'm going to do it. So let's say that I cheat because my spouse for 6 months has made me feel god awful. You know, like she puts me down, she fights, she spends all my money, she belittles me, she wishes that I fail, she doesn't have sex with me, blah, blah, blah. And then instead of talking about the issues as they come up, instead of being a man and discussing what bothers me, I just go ahead and cheat. It's not right, but I can still have the excuse that because of how I was treated, that ended in me not being monogamous. That's different, because that means that I'm only not going to be monogamous when something bad happens. Still not right. You know, you should have a discussion, have a negotiation, then choose whether to end the relationship before the cheating happens. But at least there's an excuse. You did it because of these terrible circumstances, so you're not going to not be monogamous in any situation. The issue with making it sound like, nobody can really be expected to be monogamous for that long, if you fall off the wagon, it's okay kind of talk, is that you're making it okay to not be monogamous, which then makes it more likely that you're going to be non-monogamous in monogamous relationships and wind up hurting people because you've now okayed it. The more that we justify why something is actually correct, the more we take a vice and turn it into a virtue, the more we are going to not only think about committing, but be encouraged to commit it, because it's considered a good thing. And that's very, very dangerous. And if we apply this type of moral relativism to more and more situations, we will go down a very dangerous road as a society that I really hope that we don't go down.